All right, I'm here with Doug to talk about misogyny and other things, but it's mostly misogyny I find today. And it's Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. But the first thing I've got is Doge, of course. So the first sort of chaos within Doge has appeared. Elon Musk Donald Trump put out a tweet a couple of days ago saying, I wish Elon Musk would go harder and be more extreme about canceling all the government services. So Elon Musk decided to do, of course, what he did at Twitter. He sent out an email saying, okay, everybody has to send me the top 5 accomplishments last week by Monday at midnight or you're fired. He said that on Twitter, but the actual email didn't say you'd be fired if you didn't do it. And then So anyway, then various agencies gave different contradictory orders to their staff. And in particular, Kash Patel, who apparently has hated Elon for a long time, told the FBI, ignore that email, don't answer. We have our own performance evaluation system, and who cares what this stupid Elon guy thinks. Whereas
Oh, I see.
RFK Jr. told all the medical staff, you better answer that email and do what Elon says. So everybody is in even more chaos than ever. And I've heard people say that federal workers are just completely baffled now. Some of them took the buyout offer from a month ago, but then they never heard back from anybody. Some of them asked their boss, so does this mean I'm fired or what? And the boss says, I don't know. Nobody tells me anything either. And am I going to get the payout? And they say, well, I don't know that either. Nobody knows anything. This is typical Trump administration stuff.
So, Sam, the reason that people aren't getting the buyout is because they left.
Well, there's an issue that came up immediately, which is that you cannot guarantee any of that buyout severance pay because the government's going to shut down in 2 weeks on March 14, and no funding is guaranteed beyond that point. So they can't make a promise or live up to a commitment of 9 months of severance pay.
Yeah, but let me ask a question here. Isn't that a legally binding contract?
No, I think but
No?
I've read, what they say is it is illegal of them to make that offer. They are promising something they cannot legally provide. So they say that the fundamental offer is invalid. So I think it's like I sell you the Golden Gate Bridge. You can say, well, I have to pay up. And I said, well, you can demand I pay up, but you're not going to get it. I don't have it to give you.
Yeah, but you are not you are not the owner of the Golden Gate Bridge, is what
Yeah,
I'll
the
say.
yeah, and the administration offering them that payout is not the owner of that money. That money is allocated by Congress and it has not been
Yeah,
allocated.
yeah, but they are you. This is what I want to say. You're
Yeah,
not a representative of the Golden Gate Bridge District,
that's right.
whereas these people are representatives of the government.
No, that's the fundamental problem. The Doge team is not representative of the government,
Oh, I
and
see.
they are not Congress, and they're not even an appointed agency. And if they were, they would have defined powers, and they would have had to have security clearances and stuff like that. And that's why this entire thing, ever since Trump got
I
in, has
see.
been
I
completely
see.
illegal. He just has people barging in like just sort of a random guy with no power at all, just shutting down government agencies and canceling payment when they have no legal authority to do that.
I see. I see.
That's why it's crazy. It's just sort of like a man with a gun walks into town and said, okay, I'm the boss now. You do what I say or I'll shoot you. That's essentially
Yeah.
what's happening.
Yeah.
So
Kind
anyway,
of
yeah,
kind of Wild West law.
it is. And anyway, so the Airbnb, one of the co-founders joined Doge. So now the Airbnb forum is full of everybody canceling their Airbnb reservations and saying, I won't have anything to do with this company anymore, since the leader's in Doge. And they say, well, that guy isn't officially the leader anymore, but he's still on the board. And they say, that's too close for me. So they're arguing.
So, Sam, is this
Yeah.
like the let's not go shopping at the end of the month?
Yeah. For the same reason, I think people that are cooperating with the Trump administration's coup, taking over the government, are inspiring a lot of resistance all over. I've been listening to Rachel Maddow's reports, which are amazing, about all the town halls and everybody screaming and yelling and getting hauled off and complaining. Even Republicans in Republican districts are saying, wait a minute, you were only supposed to deport like immigrants, and you're firing me and my cousin. What is this?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So, Yeah, Sam, with these boycotts in San Francisco and around the country, they've been
Yeah.
boycotting at Tesla dealerships.
Well, I think so. The whole world, Tesla's car sales have been falling like crazy, even outside this, because
Yeah.
Tesla hasn't had any new cars in quite a while, and a bunch of competitors have come up. So they're kind of falling behind.
Yeah. So, here's my question. What do you think that accomplishes to go protest for 2 hours outside of a Tesla dealership?
I think it accomplishes, it brings, it makes it so people can see that there is resistance to the administration. If everyone cowers at home, then they will say, okay, we're getting away with this. And all the people that are unhappy say, well, I better not stand out because I'll be punished. If you show that you can protest and not get shot and not get jailed, then people know they don't have to obey this administration. They're not really legitimate.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that's what you're doing. It's the same thing as hanging out a gay rights flag, a rainbow flag. My sister used to say these things seem pointless, and then I actually found people who were like gay and said, when somebody like beat me up, I went to that house. I figured here's a guys that will help me.
Oh, I see. I see.
It does
But this
show that
is,
there are some people you can trust out there, some people who are not yet Nazis. And since we are now ruled by Nazis and a Nazi administration is coming in, and I'll have more about it coming up, it is just like France under Nazi occupation. We must find out who we can trust that is resisting the Nazis.
yeah.
It's necessary to have symbols and visible shows that there are still some people who have not accepted living under Nazi rule.
Okay. Okay. I would argue, if I were in San Francisco stuck in traffic for hours because of the protest, that's not going to win me over.
No, and I don't know if they're yet blocking streets. I know about those protests. That's right.
Yeah.
The protesting in front of a car dealership, I think, is quite harmless, or in front of a government office. Um,
Right. Right.
that's
But
not
if you're
blocking traffic.
blocking,
Oh, if you're
well,
blocking
if,
traffic, then I
yeah.
agree. Then you
Yeah.
run the risk of creating resistance to your protest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And from what I read, and I haven't seen
Mhm.
any videos, but people said that they were blocking traffic and allowing buses to go through.
Well, that's a more
So,
controversial tactic. I mean, that's now, and of course, there are all these levels of protest. You go from the peaceful protest where you just have a sign, then you go to the mild
yeah.
civil disobedience like blocking traffic, and then you get down to like violence where you like set fire to buildings and stuff. And these are just levels of expressing how angry you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And whether you like it or not, the more you abuse people, the more they will move to harsher and harsher responses.
Yeah. I agree with you on that one. We've seen that.
Yeah, but I certainly don't want to be involved in violence.
Yeah.
I don't. I don't like the negative consequences, and also I'm too old. I don't want to get arrested and beat up by a cop and stuff. I've never had much appetite for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
But
I'm not. And you think about the guy that shot the medical executive. Uh,
yeah.
he's raising. Actually, a lot of people are supporting him, wearing T-shirts, free him, and everything, thinking that the medical insurance industry is so a horrible thing that he isn't really wrong to do that. Now, it's hard to believe it justifies murder, but you could argue that that medical insurance guy is committing a lot of murders too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. They are denying service.
And
And
we and our system is horrible. I mean, so many people
yeah.
live in fear of like medical debt is the number one reason for
Right.
bankruptcy. And this is all insane. All the other civilized nations like Canada and France and everything don't have this. If
Yeah.
you're sick, you get treatment. Nobody goes bankrupt.
Yeah.
They got sick.
Yeah.
I remember there was a cartoon when this TV show came up, Breaking Bad, and they said if this guy was in Canada, he'd say, "Oh my God, I've got cancer. I need to go become a criminal." I say, "What are you talking about? We got socialized medicine." He says, "Oh, that's right. I'll just go back and teach school again."
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy, you know.
Yeah. I know somebody who was in an auto accident, minor auto accident,
Yeah.
and there's some injuries, nothing, no broken bones or anything. Airbags were deployed and just some soft tissue bruising, things along those lines. So the insurance company has an agent that's been assigned to the passengers, and it's been rumored, I'll say that, that the insurance agent is trying to get a medical release for emergency room visit signed off by the passenger, and they get a bonus or a commission based on getting that signed off
Yeah.
rather than the patient getting care or the insured getting care.
Yeah. I mean, insurance is pretty much all garbage. It's ridiculous. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, there is a reason for it, obviously.
we've created,
Um,
I mean, I remember when Obamacare came out, they wanted to provide care, but instead all they did was like use government money to prop up insurance companies, which
right,
is a
right.
senseless thing. And they had to do it. It's all they could get through Congress, but it's complete corruption. I mean, the
Yeah,
middleman insurance companies don't really contribute value.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
that's why I'm so glad in California where I have Kaiser. I got socialized medicine, and boy, it's great. I never worry about money at all. You just go to the doctor.
Well, the problem with Kaiser, though, is what I found is you need to have work with a psychologist to make the appointment because making an appointment to see your doctor drives you crazy.
Not me. There's an online portal.
Oh,
Make an appointment. I get right in. I have no trouble. I think their different locations are different.
yeah,
The one
yeah.
here in South
Yeah,
San Francisco has been really good. I've had no troubles.
yeah. So in the East Bay, I'm told to make an appointment with my doctor. I
Yeah.
can do it with the app. I can't. They tell me to use the web page. I can't. They
I've
tell
heard,
me to call.
yeah,
They
my
tell
other,
me to call in
yeah,
a phone number. I call in the phone number for the
yeah.
appointment line. They tell me there are no appointments available.
Yeah, I've had another friend in East Bay tell me they're unhappy over there too. And,
Yeah.
and I
Okay.
think and when I go to downtown San Francisco, those people seem more stressed and less helpful. I think it's the South San Francisco office that's really good. I guess it varies.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Anyway, I
think
got
so.
one more of these Doge ones. The
Okay.
federal, you remember Microsoft's Deep Throat? You probably do from like 10 years ago. There was a guy
No.
inside Microsoft that made an account on like Twitter called Deep Throat, and he started leaking all the internal dirt about Microsoft corporate policy.
Yes.
And it
Yeah.
was really interesting. And it took them like 2 years to track him down and fire him. So, in the same spirit, federal workers have launched a new site to leak their experiences of what happens with Doge. So, they only have
Oh.
a few stories now, but they're going to publish more stories of people, what's really going on, which is, of course, very different than what they say. I mean, they say we're only eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, but what they're doing is just randomly shutting down whole agencies. And one of the things is they're firing all the probationary workers because they're like temps. You can technically fire them without going through a lot of steps. But what they don't understand is that you can be a federal worker and be there for decades, and when you get a promotion to a new position, you're technically probationary for the first year or something. So a bunch of people they're firing are in fact experienced workers with good performance reviews. And then they just send out a bunch of firing notices saying you're fired for cause for being failing a performance review when these people have not failed a performance review. That's typical Elon Musk and Donald Trump stuff, just making up a complete
Yeah.
lie.
Yeah.
So anyway, it more truth will be leaking out about this. Uh, anyway, that's the
Well,
double.
Sam, yeah,
Yeah.
let me tell you, it's not in America. Let's move over to Australia. Let's go down under. Do you hear what's going on down there?
No.
So, Australia lawmakers have enacted a social media ban that goes into effect later this year for people under 16 years of age.
Oh, that they can't use social media at all?
Correct.
Oh, I think I did
So,
hear about this, and I know a lot of people want to do that here. Scott Galloway wants to do that here. Yeah.
yeah. So, Australians in the age of 6 to 16, 80%, pardon me, 80% of Australian youth from 6 to 16 have said that they're online.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before. The problem is,
We
how do you
did.
do that? How do you do that? How do you tell how old somebody is?
Well, this is where the Australian government has contracted with a company in England that's going to use maybe facial recognition or
Oh,
bone
man.
structure or pictures or
Yeah,
some magical method.
that's
Now, what
never
do you,
gonna work.
oh, it's going to work. It's going to work.
Well, it'll
And
probably work like 80% of the time or something.
well, we know it's going to work as well as it did in Texas and France because they both tried and it failed. So
Oh,
we
yeah.
know it's going to work that well.
Yeah.
So the thing is, what if you don't comply?
Yeah.
Little slap on the wrist.
Like, what if you
No.
just put on a VPN, which is the easiest way to not comply?
Oh, Sam, you can't tell these kids to do that because that'll circumvent the whole thing. And by the way, don't tell them to use a fake account or somebody else's account
Right.
because
Just like
they'll
just like asking an adult to go buy you a beer at the store. Just get somebody else to register for you and use that account.
exactly. Now, this is the part that I think is interesting. The the uh, it's the duty of the social media companies to enforce this.
Yeah.
And if they don't, they get a little slap on the wrist, up to $32 million
That's
US.
going to deter Facebook a lot.
Yeah. So, we'll see. And as I
Yeah.
said, in Texas, this was tried, and France tried it, and it failed miserably. I think Utah tried it, or they were going to try it, and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
didn't. Yeah.
Like Utah tried it. And I know, and now the southern states have required age-gated porn. So Pornhub is pulled out of the states. We talked about that. So now
What?
Florida, Texas, and everybody, VPN use has skyrocketed as everybody wants to get to the porn. So that's another thing you could do, just like Apple pulling out of the UK, their encryption product, because the UK said you have to let us have the unencrypted communications. They say, okay, we're going to warn UK users, you people don't get the encryption option anymore. And that I think is a pretty reasonable thing. Say, if you guys pass outrageous laws, we're just going to not service you anymore, and we'll see if your citizens are happy with this arrangement.
Yeah, Sam, it's interesting you bring up Pornhub. I saw a
Yeah,
story from late last year. And do you know that Pornhub has been really curtailed back?
I don't know.
So
Are they going
here,
broke
I
or
didn't,
something?
yeah, I only picked up part of this story, but Pornhub is owned by what do you call it? Out of New York,
Venture
like,
capital firm or something?
yeah, yeah, like a VC firm, and
Yeah.
it's led by an Austrian.
Hmm.
And apparently, there are a lot of claims of underage girls in the videos
Oh,
who have all filed a class action lawsuit against Pornhub
oh,
and its subsidiaries.
oh.
And as a result, and I'll just kind of some of the facts, Pornhub was the fourth most visited website on the internet, which, I get that. I could see
Yeah,
that,
but
I
they're probably
guess.
not going to make enough money to pay all those lawsuits.
No, and so what's happened is they've so where Facebook has, I think, 400 people that are evaluating videos as they're put up, and doing content verification.
Yeah.
On Pornhub, they had 20.
Oh man, and they
So
need much more. They have much harsher legal consequences for failing than.
yeah, so it's from what I understand, and Pornhub has quite a lot of other um, associated, affiliated websites that are all under the Pornhub umbrella.
Yeah.
And I've been told, or at least it was mentioned, that 80% of those are gone now. So it's
Wow.
substantially impacted their availability. And
Well,
I don't
yeah.
know
I
where the,
mean,
yeah,
if they actually have a significant amount of underage models, I think that'll end the entire industry. I mean, the consequences of that are severe. That's like the Roman Catholic Church and all their sexual scandals coming out. The punishment for this stuff is so severe that may end.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But the problem is whose laws,
Well,
you know?
I think they probably make most of their money in America, and I think American law is very harsh.
I'm not sure about that. I think, you know, Japan and China and Europe.
Well, I've heard that in Japan, there's an awful lot of child sexual exploitation, and it's legal there or tolerated, much more than
Yeah,
America. So
yeah.
maybe they could just move to Japan and be in Japan only, but I don't think they can be in America or the UK or Australia
Right, right.
or
Yeah,
Canada or anything with this kind of stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. I just haven't had time to look into the story more, but
yeah,
it's kind of interesting,
yeah,
what the internet has provided to us now.
yeah. Well, I got some Nazis. So
Okay.
Steve Bannon at CPAC did the Nazi salute. He's now the fourth current administration figure that has done this in public. So I think this is going to become common. Like I say, I've been referring to them for like the last month or so as just an openly Nazi regime because they are. They're not even hiding it anymore, although they haven't hidden it much. I mean, the previous CPAC was on an Odal Rune stage, which was amazingly obvious. And and now there's a neo-Nazi violent terrorist group called the Base, which the United States law enforcement, the FBI, had been greatly pushing back on, arresting more than a dozen of its members. It's plotted an assassination, mass shootings, and other actions in Europe, which made it a proscribed terrorist organization in several countries. But now they are reforming and growing because the Trump administration has made it a policy to move away from policing far-right extremism, which makes total sense. He has generally defended violent Nazi terrorist groups like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, saying that's my base. So now that we're a Nazi country, um, it is logical that we should just sort of give medals to Nazi terrorist groups, considering them to be patriotic Americans. I think that's the current position of the government. And anyway, then I got the misogyny stuff, which struck me as
Yeah, let's talk misogyny.
I know it was the biggest thing. So the Christian, there's the proposed Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, or SAVE Act, is now considered a priority for Republicans in the House. And what it does is it requires documentation such as a passport or birth certificate matching your current legal name in order to vote. So if you are a married woman who took your husband's name, you will not have that documentation and you can't vote. And they say there's a whole lot of people will fail this test. A driver's license will not do. And you're going to have proof of your name change, which is perhaps possible to obtain, but very difficult to obtain. So this is the way this works. This is the way voter suppression works. You don't outright ban someone voting, like when they in Jim Crow days when they wanted to stop black people from voting.
Yeah.
They didn't just say black people can't vote. They said, well, you have to pass a literacy test or something. And then they made a test designed so the black people couldn't pass the test. And so here they've made a identity proof, knowing full well that women can't pass the test. So that gets women not to vote. And this is part of the voter suppression, which is how Trump won last time, and certainly his only hope of winning next time. Boy, I think even with all the voter suppression they can manage, they're not going to make it next time with the amount of pushback, especially now that he's announced the tariffs are in fact going in effect next week against Canada and Mexico. And that's going to crash the economy. Anyway, so that's the first one that caught my attention, actually deliberately blocking women's right to vote. And a Missouri lawmaker has proposed a registry of pregnant women at risk for abortions. So that's another scary activity. You know, the government has a list of them so they can punish them in various ways. And he tries to say it'll be like voluntary and stuff, but just like the others, I've learned this is how it works. They pretend something has like a safety cap to make it seem less harmful, but in fact, the actual result of it is something harmful. And perhaps the worst is they are in fact going to move next week. They're going to start moving the trans prisoners to the jails that match their birth gender and denying them all care. And this has been proven. They've tested it a lot. The reason a lot of trans people are in jail is because they typically get thrown out, become homeless, and end up having to do sex work to survive. And they've found that when you take a trans woman and put her in a male prison, of course, she gets abused horribly.
Yeah.
And it is just unconscionable, but this matches the current Republican Nazi position. By the way, exactly what the Nazis did of trans people don't exist and gay people don't exist either. And anything that admits that they exist will just be scrubbed from databases and scrubbed from federal web pages and removed from companies and everything and removed from school, college campuses and everything else so that everybody knows that these people should just be killed. These people just should not be allowed to exist. And, it creates the atmosphere of fear, so everybody else feels like they have to hide because the government is coming for them. And
Yeah,
that's why I support these public protests, just like gay groups that go out and have a gay pride march saying, no, we have to show that we live here and we're not ashamed of being gay and we're not going to hide in a corner. We're going to, I have a right to be here.
yeah, yeah,
And if you don't make a public show of it, then you won't have a right to be here. People will say you have to hide in a corner. And when we find out, we're going to do terrible things to you.
yeah. And if you turn back the clocks to 1933,
Yeah.
isn't that what happened?
Yes, Berlin was the center of trans rights with a
Yeah.
famous, world famous trans clinic where people could get therapy and stuff, and they were accepting it all. And that was the first thing the Nazis shut down.
And wasn't there a high-ranking officer in the Nazis, Ernest Röhm? Does that name sound familiar?
No, but I would imagine, just like the Republicans, that a bunch of them are secretly gay and trans and stuff. That would totally make sense because the only people that make such a big deal about it are people who have some inner turmoil about it.
Yeah, he was, I'm just looking here. He was, he played a significant role in Hitler's rise, and then he had him murdered.
Yep, that's this is very common. The people who are yelling loudly about something, clearly that's a big issue for them personally. And for most people, like if you're straight and you're not worried about maybe I'm gay, then you wouldn't. I don't know why you care about gay people.
Yeah, so I'm just looking here a little bit. He was the first gay politician.
Yeah,
He was an early member of the Nazi Party and was very close to Adolf Hitler.
yeah.
So anyway, we'll see.
In this
We'll
case,
see.
I was very interested to learn about Tim Miller. He was the Republican Oppo research worker and gay. And then after a while, he saw it happen all over. He came out as gay. He said, well, I'm not going to be one of these Republicans where it comes out I'm gay and I was hiding it. To hell with that. I'll just come out. And then he had to leave the Republican Party like everybody else for opposing Trump. But he wrote a book about it called, Why We Did It, which is very
Hmm.
interesting.
Yeah, I see. I see. Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
You got another story for us?
Oh, well, I got one actually in the same vein. I don't know if you know about Chris Hadnagy. I've been wondering
No.
about this for years. Chris Hadnagy is a big, important guy in information security. He ran the social engineering village at DEF CON, which was world famous, that introduced the whole world to the concept of social engineering. I mean, Kevin Mitnick came first, but this made it a professional thing where now it's part of every pen test. Is social engineering is part of it, tricking your employees into doing the wrong thing. And this is a big part of protecting your company is training your staff not to fall for social engineering. So he ran this village and it was a big deal, promoted the thing a lot. And then about 2 years ago, or maybe 4 years ago now, DEF CON suddenly announced he's banned. He can never come back to DEF CON for no reason. And I wondered, what's the reason? What did he do? So finally, he sued Jeff Moss, and Jeff Moss replied. And there's a court document just came out yesterday explaining what he did. And he was sexually harassing the women. He was threatening people with violence. He was putting lies about other people and saying they were starting competing companies and stealing his proprietary stuff when they weren't. And so there's just page after page of this detailing all these women and other people talking about the abuse he made of them. So it finally resolves that thing I've been wondering for years when they kicked him out. What did he do? Now it's all out there. So anyway, it's interesting
I
reading
see.
for people in the information security community, especially people that are involved in DEF CON, because DEF CON has, like most, over the last 5 or 10 years, it's evolved a code of conduct and rules and ways to enforce that code of conduct to try to, stop people from harassing and abusing people at the conference. And he's part of that. So anyway,
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. What's going to happen to conferences like DEF CON, I think,
well,
with the current administration?
quite a few conferences shut down as this happened, as they had discovered instances of harassment and they found it just too difficult to deal with. DEF CON is trying vigorously to survive by just having stronger code of conduct. I think this is part of any conference growing beyond a certain size. DEF CON's up around 30,000 now. And at that point, you're basically a whole city. And so you're going to have real crime inside the conference, and you're going to need a police force inside the conference, which they have, and you're going to need rules and sort of tribunals to decide what people have done. When you're a small conference, you can all just be friends and get along. But as
Yeah,
At a
Yeah.
certain size, you become like a city and you have all the problems of a city.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Kind of, same thing happened to a degree with Burning Man, but that was
Oh,
more
yeah.
due to weather. But yeah.
Yeah, but I think they grew big.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
I went, the same thing happened to the Rainbow Family, another group that I went to one of them, and it's sort of like Burning Man. They just meet in a park and have like hippies and stuff and dancing and art and everything. And then I heard that they got so big there were actually like murders and rapes at the site, and
Yeah.
they had to have some kind of police force when they were trying to get away from all that.
Yeah, it's interesting that at some of these conferences, there are people who I will call shills with a political agenda who are coming in and making accusations that I think are not true and to just cause turmoil within the conference.
Well, I'm not sure I know any cases where that was proven, but certainly it is a possibility. You certainly could do that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
therefore it seems, and like paying women to accuse someone of rape falsely. I think that has happened sometimes, although not at these conferences that I'm aware of. But I mean, that's the problem, of course. There are going to be some degree of false incidents. Like there was a famous guy, Jesse Smollett, I'm thinking. There was a famous actor who actually paid people to beat him up and say they did it because he was gay to like create a false hate crime incident, which was,
yeah,
and then it came out it was fake and he was actually punished for faking it. So, I mean, that does happen.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are more interests in these conferences than just the people attending the conference, if you will.
Sure. And lots
There
of,
are hidden agendas. Yeah.
sure. It reminds me of people that deliberately step out in front of a car so they can sue for medical damages.
Yeah.
You could create a problem and then try to like make a lawsuit or somehow benefit from the consequences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, yeah. Yeah. Same idea. Or a
Yeah.
political point or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
along those lines. All right. What
Yeah.
else you got for us?
Well, so I was surprised by this. OpenAI is going to move away from Microsoft. Now, I thought they were joined at the hip because they need all the computing resources of Microsoft, but what they're going to do by 2030 is they're going to get three-quarters of its data center capacity from Stargate, a new project expected to be heavily financed by SoftBank. So we'll see if that's true. That will help. And I noticed Microsoft has begun offering alternative AI engines in addition to OpenAI. So they seem to be trying to divorce a bit, get some gap between the two companies. Probably a good idea on both sides. Uh, and especially now the other companies are coming up. I just saw a article saying that the new version of Anthropic is the best reasoning AI now. And so it would make sense not to be totally tied to OpenAI as if they're the only one. And that's one thought pretty good. Google currently uses SMS uh, text messages as the second factor for two-factor authentication. That's one of the options. And they're going to quit doing that, which matches the government recommendation. Everybody else saying, a bunch of people have invaded the phone system like our foreign adversaries, and you really can't trust SMSs. People can steal those. So what they're going to do instead is when you log into Gmail on the browser, they're going to put up a QR code and say, scan that code with your phone to prove that you have your phone, which seems to me pretty brilliant. That accomplishes the same thing, and there is no insecure SMS message involved. Um, but when that came out on Mastodon, somebody said, "Well, this just opens up a new attack." Where I put up a fake Gmail page and I put up a fake QR code, and I say, "Well, I'm not sure that's any different than the other before, but anyway, that's perhaps another kind of weakness." But it does get away from the SMS insecurity. More and more people have been saying don't use SMS as the second factor. And it really is, it's better than single factor, but not much. The SMS is
Yeah.
not a
Right.
very trustworthy technique. Yeah. And PayPal has a feature to add a new address to your account. And therefore, you can say, I have an email address, but I want to have a second email address connected to my PayPal account. So what you can do is go in there and put in somebody else's address, and now they will get an email from PayPal, which will not bounce in their spam filter because it's an official email from PayPal. And somehow they were able to modify the content of that message. So that message says, your PayPal account was just used to buy a new MacBook Pro M4. Thanks a lot. And if you don't agree with it, click on this phishing link. So this is an old trick, but somehow they found some way to modify the message sent by PayPal. So you get a message that came from a trusted sender that tells you something scary and has a link for you to click on. So that's a thing to be aware of.
Hmm.
And
Interesting. Another scam, huh?
always another one. And
Yeah.
remember there's one a
Well,
couple weeks ago.
it's a recycled one, right?
Yeah, well,
If you will.
the surprising thing is there's some way to use the internal PayPal system to send this mail so it's trusted. Something like this happened a couple of weeks ago to Microsoft. There was some way to use like an Azure panel to get it to trigger and send a message to other people that really came from inside Microsoft's official Azure account but contained malicious information. And uh,
Yeah.
and the last one I've got is there's a commenter from Europe saying, now that the United States has taken Russia's side in the Ukraine war, and we appear to be a part of the evil empire now. We're now Russian-controlled state, apparently. European countries really need to stop using American services. This is something that's come up over and over again, the safe harbor and other things. European nations use American services, even for government data and everything else, because we have all these great American services like Google and Amazon and everything. And yet that means, they're in a country where they have no privacy rights. And he said, now we really cannot trust America now that they're supporting Russia invading European countries. So we really have to stop using American services for our government data, which I think they're entirely right. I mean, Trump is, and they say, don't expect NATO to last. And Trump is absolutely placing us on a hostile relationship with Europe now so he can cozy up to Putin, his best buddy. So, this reminds me again of the horrifying thing of all the never Trump Republicans, the ones I follow. Like Stuart Stevens had the same thing. How could the party of Reagan become Russia's partner? What in the hell? And I think this is where you have to realize something, which I think as a teacher I had to realize. You think people understand you, and they understand your point, and it turns out a lot of them never got the point at all. And that's what Stuart Stevens said. We thought we had principles in the Conservative Party and we stood for things. And then I see all the people betray all that. And I realize they never were on board with any of that. I was just fooling myself. I had this intellectual basis and these principles, and they were all following me for some other reason. Like maybe they thought they'd get more paid over here or something. As soon as you promise them something, they'll just go to the other side. So this, I think, is a problem with any kind of leader. You think the people understand your whole message, and it might very well be that they only understand 10% of it, and they're really not there for most of it.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So I got two stories. You have any
Okay.
more, Sam?
Nope, that's it. Go ahead.
All right. I got two stories for you.
Yeah.
This one is kind of an interesting one. This story is out of France, taking place right now.
Mhm.
Curious you've heard of it. Somebody used a stolen credit card. They went to a store and they bought some things, including lottery tickets. They did the scratch off and they wound up winning $500 million or
Oh,
500 euros, 500 million euros.
oh man. And now there's an argument about who gets it. Holy cow.
So who gets the money?
I know.
So interesting legal question.
Yeah.
So somehow we know from the facts that I know so far that have been shared, apparently whoever bought the ticket, they don't have his face, but they know that they won the winning lottery ticket, and obviously it's not paid off in the store. And the person in the store confirmed that they did win.
Yeah.
So you've got a winning lottery ticket. The person has not claimed the ticket, but they're a thief, or they've got
Yeah.
the proceeds, or somehow they got a stolen credit card that they knew was a stolen, so they were committing a crime.
This is clearly going to be in the courts for years.
Well, we don't know who stole it. We don't know who has the winning lottery ticket.
I know, but
So the person who whose wallet was stolen
yeah.
hired an attorney, and the attorney said, "Come to us, come. We won't press charges." And this is France. I know nothing about France law.
Well, that's not a bad plan. You could say, we won't press charges. We'll just split the money 50-50, something like that. That might be a good
And
solution.
that's what they're doing. But here's the thing. It's a criminal act, and
Oh,
that's
yeah.
a civil, and a lawyer can't say that the government isn't going to charge you.
Well, I know sometimes you can say, I'm not pressing charges, like if somebody punches you. I don't know about a case like this, but there are cases in which a victim can say, I don't want to press charges.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they won't press charges.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how
Yeah,
it works,
yeah,
especially in French law. I don't know how it works.
yeah. So this gets interesting. So if we apply American law to this, there's an attorney on YouTube, Steve Latos, who just
Yeah.
tells a story. And he said this is kind of a tricky one. And what he said is that if you apply the legal theory of unjust enrichment, so the proceeds, right, of the stolen credit card was used to obtain money to get the lottery ticket. And in theory, those proceeds should go to the owner of the money because essentially it was a proxy buy.
Well, I would say this. I would say this is like you hire an investment counselor and you don't have the guts to make a risky investment, but they do and then win. The,
Yeah,
the,
but
the
if they,
criminal actually contributed the boldness to the exercise that was necessary, that the original person lacked.
yeah, but what, but that was not your money that was used to
That's
make the
right.
investment, right?
Yeah, but they were the one willing to take a risk.
Right, but here you have to apply again, I don't know
Yeah.
this theory that well, and he said it's not really well applied. But
Yeah.
here you have to come up with something that's just.
Yeah.
So either the lottery ticket will never be recovered or redeemed is one
Right.
option.
Yeah.
But on the other side,
Yeah.
yeah, if it does, the thief could give it to somebody else who could present the lottery ticket.
Yeah, but I mean, that's one thing I'm thinking. Lottery tickets do have rules, like you can't be underage, you can't be
Right.
in a lottery, and they could just as easily have a rule that you can't pay with money that's not yours or the ticket is invalid. That would be a good solution, but they would have had to thought that in advance and put that in the like terms and conditions.
Right. That would be under American law. We don't know what French law is.
Well, it
All
would
right.
be, I don't think it's the law. I think it would be in the contract. There's like fine
Yeah,
print on
yeah,
the
in the
ticket.
contract. Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So that's a good one.
All right. And I got one more story for you. This is a story you've heard of Tesla.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a guy by the name of Trevor Milton that got in trouble with the law around the same time as Elizabeth Holmes and the falling of Theranos. And as we recall, Elizabeth Holmes got $9 billion and is now serving time in federal prison. And I believe it's 9, 10 years is what she got.
Yeah.
Trevor Milton went sort of in competition with Tesla, and he came up with Nikola trucks in Arizona. And his goal was to sell a hydrogen powered semi truck.
Okay.
And it actually he has a pretty good plan, I would argue, in that he would have a hydrogen facility in San Francisco, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles. So you'd only need three refilling sites,
Right.
and you'd run on hydrogen fuel. Where the hydrogen come from? The cheapest method right now is from crude oil,
Right.
but his argument was we could use the excess solar power that's being generated in California that we can't get rid of right now. The power companies have to pay companies to get rid of.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good plan, right?
Well, it might be, it might not be, but certainly it's not ridiculous. You might be
Yeah,
able to do it.
it's plausible is what
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
And we have to see if it works.
Yeah.
So he also claimed to have an electric vehicle called the Badger that he was producing. That was the same time as Tesla came out and Elon was talking about the Cybertruck. So this was
Hmm.
going to be a competition to it.
Okay.
So Trevor got into a deal for either $2 or $4 billion with GM. And as it turns out, that Trevor made a number of mistakes, and he wouldn't allow people to see his secret proprietary hydrogen conversion mechanism. But some photographers or press people took high res pictures and realized that the hydrogen generator was actually a commercial product that he put duct tape over and spray painted and kind of added some things to kind of mask it. But it was an off the shelf product. So
Yeah,
there was
like
nothing proprietary
so it
there.
was bogus like Theranos. Yeah.
It was bogus like Theranos. And he made, Trevor made a very nice video, and he shows one of his trucks. He had a couple, prototype trucks that had to be closed with duct tape to hold the doors closed because it was a prototype. I get all that.
Hmm.
Okay. So they made this really nice video of a semi truck driving down the freeway at 60, 70 miles an hour. Now, in reality, what happened is they went to, I believe there's a highway in Utah that's called Mormon Highway or Mormon Mountain Highway that's a downhill grade. They tilted the camera
Yeah.
so that it looked like it was on level ground, but really it was going downhill. And people jokingly, after that video went live in public, people were going up to the same spot. You could see the same trees, same mountains, putting their car in neutral and also going 60, 70 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So once that video hit, there was an investment company called the Hindenburg Group. So this story gets a little complex. The Hindenburg Group shorted Nikola stock.
Oh, well, now I understand the name better. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Released a 50-point
Yeah.
research paper stating all the fraud that Trevor was committing.
Yeah.
And part of it also was that there were people who were following this in Arizona, that he was going to build a big plant, just like Tesla did the big battery plant, assembly plant in Arizona. And there were people out there with drones, and they would fly over the property that he bought, and nothing happened. Nothing was being built. And Trevor was saying, "Oh, we've got big buildings. They're under construction right now." And people showed drone footage that none of the trucks had moved in months. Nothing happened.
Yeah.
Trevor eventually was considered the male version of Elizabeth Holmes because they were both kind of being put on trial same time, kind
Yeah.
of jokingly, but the two of them were compared. So, as it turns out, where are we today? Trevor Milton is in jail. He had a 4-year sentence.
Hmm.
And right before he went to prison, he bought a $46 million home, the most expensive home in Utah. His family is living there from what I was told, or what we were told when he went to prison. He's now appealing his charges. He has, I think, 2 years left, and he might even be down to less than a year, but he's going after appealing, trying to get out. Hindenburg Group has now been found to short a number of other companies, and they've been disbanded as of January of 2025. And where's Nikola Trucks right now? Well, they just filed for Chapter 13 bankruptcy.
Right.
What happened to the Badger truck that Milton said they're driving around? You can see them on the road. And people said, "Well, let's see one." And he said, "Well, it's a secret. We're not going to show you, but they are on the roads. We're test driving them in Arizona."
Yeah.
No one had ever seen a Badger truck. We've never seen even after the trial and everything, no Badger trucks were ever produced.
Yeah.
GM then backed out of their $2 or $4 billion deal. So everybody's fallen apart, as sort of you would expect. But
Yeah.
Trevor apparently is still worth a couple $1 billion, $2, $3 billion.
Hmm.
So he may have wound up pretty good out of this whole deal. He does own 25% of Nikola's stock. So that's going to take a dent in it. And I believe he has to pay $100 million in damages, or somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
So it's something that he could do. So kind of interesting. And I guess the lesson to be learned here is, if you do big investments like this, crime can pay.
Oh, well, sure. I mean, crime at every level has some level of paying, but there's
Yeah.
so many failed startups and so many vaporware companies and stuff. This is all venture capital companies know this. A lot of
Yeah.
these startups are going to just fail horribly and turn out to be pretty much bogus.
But I will argue, Sam, it is a good idea, is it not? To take
Oh,
hydrogen,
oh, sure. I
solar
mean,
power,
oh,
yeah.
The leader of Toyota is big on hydrogen. He thinks EVs are not really the future, but hydrogen is. And right now it isn't popular, but it could be. It's not stupid.
Yeah, but I've seen people talk about it is stupid idea to have hydrogen fueling stations like gas stations.
Sure. I mean,
There,
there might be a problem, but it's not completely
yeah.
ridiculous. I mean, it's an alternative to electric.
Yeah, it's an alternative to electric, but the storage, the transport
Right.
is what makes it tricky.
Right. There are problems. And,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean, it might be good for long haul trucking or something. That's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it's not,
special applications, but
yeah.
I don't think it will for cars.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't look like, I think it's not going to happen even if it is a good idea because we moved to electric. And this I've seen many times. Once you have something that works well enough, nobody cares if you have a new thing, even if it's better. This is now the standard.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
And
unless you could prove something is
yeah,
terribly wrong with electric cars, just like when Microsoft brought out a phone, I say, well, it's got to be either cheaper than Android or much better than iPhone, or you've got no market.
yeah,
Even if it's
yeah.
great, it would have to be really great to displace a market that already has something that's working well enough.
Yeah, well, go back to when cars were coming about late 1800s. What was the technology that had been proven for 100 years?
Horses, right?
What? Oh,
Horses.
no, no, the technology.
Oh, I don't know. Steam engines?
Yeah, steam engines. We had
Yeah,
over 100 years. And so the first cars were steam.
yeah,
And I'll tell you, if you go to Pier 39 or over by Pier 39, there's the Musée Mécanique, the pinball museum.
yeah.
You familiar with that?
I don't think so.
So that was at the World's Fair Exposition on Treasure Island in 1939, and
Hmm.
they moved it to the Cliff House, and it's a collection of pinball machines that go back to the 1800s.
Hmm.
And whoever owns that happens to have in there a steam-powered motorcycle.
Oh, that's
Think about
okay.
that. Jay Leno has a steam-powered car in his car collection. So
Yeah,
it was steam power. The three of them, the three technologies out there were steam, gasoline, and electricity.
right.
And steam kind of, you needed to fire up a fire. So if you were going to the store, you'd have to plan 20 minutes in advance,
Yeah,
right, to get the steam going. So steam kind of faded out, and it was electricity and gasoline. Women liked the electric because there was no oil, not a lot of noise, and things
yeah.
like that. And I think there was a car company, Baker Car Company, that lasted till about the 1930s, and then it was all gas and diesel.
Yeah, I think they didn't have good enough batteries, I would guess.
Yeah, it was all
Problem.
lead
Yeah,
acid batteries, took too
yeah,
long to charge, blah, blah,
yeah,
blah, blah.
yeah,
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 cars were going faster and faster.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
The way it always is.
yeah, yeah. But, sometimes the technology that's the standard is supplanted, is replaced.
Yeah, but like I say, the head of Toyota, there are people who are not stupid that are pushing for
Yeah,
hydrogen. So it's
yeah,
not completely out of completely crazy.
yeah,
But it's,
yeah.
but it's
It's not. And there are a couple hydrogen refueling stations in the East Bay. There's one on the
yeah,
way to LA, or at
yep.
least I know of one. I've
Kind
never
of
seen a car fuel up, but
It kind of reminds me of like diesel consumer cars. That was another thing that
yeah,
was big a few decades ago. But that was just because they faked the emission results to make it seem like the emissions were better when they weren't.
yeah. And there was for a while back in the 70s propane powered
Oh
cars.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
biofuel around. Some people
Yeah,
have,
biofuel. Yeah,
yeah,
people have talked. That's kind of faded away too.
yeah. But there's all these alternatives out there,
Yeah,
and it's good
yeah.
because maybe one day one of them will be better than what we have.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, that's it for
Okay.
me.
Yep, me
This
too.
was a long episode, but
Yep.
it
We'll have
was
another one
fun.
on Friday.
Another one on Friday. You got it.
Okay.